The Whispers of Cedar Grove. It was a warm summer evening when Evelyn Parker decided to move to Cedar Grove. Her husband, Richard, had passed away the previous year, and she sought solace in the quiet charm of this small, seemingly idyllic town nestled deep within the Vermont woods. Cedar Grove was known for its picturesque landscapes and close-knit community, making it an ideal place for Evelyn to begin anew. Little did she know, the town harbored a dark secret, whispered about in hushed tones by the older residents. Evelyn purchased a charming, albeit somewhat dilapidated Victorian house on the outskirts of town. The house had stood empty for years, casting an eerie shadow over the neighborhood. Locals avoided it, claiming it was haunted by the spirits of its previous inhabitants. But Evelyn, a pragmatic woman, dismissed such notions as superstitious nonsense. She was determined to restore the house to its former glory and start fresh. From the moment she stepped inside, Evelyn felt a chill in the air, despite the summer heat. The house was cold and dark, with heavy curtains drawn over the windows, blocking out the sunlight. Dust covered every surface, and cobwebs clung to the corners. But Evelyn saw potential. She set to work immediately, cleaning and repairing, making the house livable once more. As the days passed, Evelyn noticed odd occurrences. She would often hear faint whispers when she was alone in the house, a soft murmuring that seemed to come from the walls themselves. At first, she dismissed it as the wind or the creaking of an old house settling, but the whispers persisted, growing louder and more distinct with each passing day. One evening, while unpacking a box of books in the living room, Evelyn heard a loud crash from upstairs. She rushed up to find her bedroom mirror shattered, shards of glass scattered across the floor. A chill ran down her spine as she realized there was no apparent reason for the mirror to break. She told herself it must have been an accident, but unease settled in her heart. The next day, she visited the town library to learn more about the history of her new home. The librarian, an elderly woman named Margaret, eyed Evelyn with a mixture of curiosity and concern when she asked about the house. Margaret hesitated before speaking, her voice low and cautious. "The house you live in, it has a dark past," Margaret said. "Years ago, a family named the Whitfields lived there. They were a reclusive lot, rarely seen in town. One night, a terrible tragedy occurred. The entire family was found dead under mysterious circumstances. Some say they were murdered, others claim they were cursed. Since then, strange things have been reported by anyone who tried to live there." Evelyn felt a shiver run down her spine, but maintained her composure. "What kind of strange things?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "Whispers in the night, objects moving on their own, sudden drops in temperature," Margaret replied. "Some even say they've seen apparitions of the Whitfield family, wandering the halls. No one stays in that house for long." Evelyn left the library with a heavy heart. She didn't believe in ghosts, but the whispers and the shattered mirror were hard to ignore. She resolved to uncover the truth about the Whitfield family and the events that transpired in her home. That night, as she lay in bed, the whispers grew louder, filling her ears with indistinct, urgent murmurs. Sleep eluded her as the shadows seemed to close in around her. The next morning, Evelyn decided to explore the attic, a place she had avoided until now. The narrow staircase creaked under her weight as she ascended, the air growing colder with each step. The attic was filled with old furniture, covered in dust and cobwebs. In the corner, she found an old trunk, its lid slightly ajar. Inside were faded photographs, yellowed letters, and a diary belonging to Elizabeth Whitfield, the matriarch of the ill-fated family. Evelyn carefully opened the diary, its pages brittle with age. The entries detailed the Whitfields' descent into madness. Elizabeth wrote of hearing whispers, seeing shadows move on their own, and feeling an oppressive presence in the house. She believed the house was cursed, haunted by malevolent spirits that sought to drive them to madness. The final entry was particularly chilling. They come for us in the night, their whispers filling our minds with dread. We cannot escape. The house will not let us leave. It demands our souls. Evelyn felt a wave of fear wash over her. The diary confirmed her suspicions that something was terribly wrong with the house. She decided to seek help from the town's only spiritual medium, a woman named Agnes, who lived on the outskirts of Cedar Grove. Agnes was a reclusive figure, known for her ability to communicate with the spirit world. When Evelyn explained her predicament, Agnes agreed to visit the house and perform a séance to uncover the source of the haunting. As they prepared for the séance, the air in the house grew colder, the whispers louder and more insistent. They gathered in the living room, candles casting flickering shadows on the walls. Agnes closed her eyes and began to chant, her voice low and resonant. The temperature dropped further, and the candles flickered wildly. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew through the room, extinguishing the candles and plunging them into darkness. A voice, barely more than a whisper, filled the room. "Leave this place," it hissed. "You do not belong here." Agnes's eyes snapped open, wide with fear. "We are not alone," she said. "The spirits here are restless, angry. They are trapped in this house, bound by a terrible curse." Evelyn's heart pounded in her chest. "What can we do to free them?" she asked, her voice trembling. Agnes took a deep breath. "We must perform a ritual to cleanse the house and release the spirits, but it will not be easy. The curse is strong, and the spirits will resist." Over the next few days, Evelyn and Agnes gathered the necessary ingredients for the ritual: herbs, candles, and sacred symbols. They prepared the house, cleansing each room with sage and holy water. The whispers grew louder, more frantic, as if the spirits knew what they were planning. The night of the ritual, a thunderstorm raged outside, lightning illuminating the darkened sky. Evelyn and Agnes stood in the center of the living room, surrounded by a circle of candles. Agnes began to chant, her voice rising above the howling wind. The air grew thick with tension, and the house seemed to tremble around them. As the chant reached its climax, a figure appeared in the doorway. It was a woman, her face twisted in anguish, her eyes empty and soulless. Evelyn recognized her from the photographs as Elizabeth Whitfield. The apparition moved towards them, her mouth opening in a silent scream. Agnes raised her hands, shouting an incantation. The figure recoiled, but the whispers grew louder, filling the room with a cacophony of voices. Shadows swirled around them, taking on terrifying forms. Evelyn felt a cold hand grasp her arm, pulling her towards the darkness. "Resist them!" Agnes cried. "Do not let them take you!" With a surge of determination, Evelyn broke free from the grasping hand. She joined Agnes in the chant, their voices merging into one. The shadows writhed and twisted, the whispers turning into agonized screams. The house shook violently, and the air grew thick with a malevolent presence. Suddenly, there was a blinding flash of light. The shadows dissolved, the whispers silenced. The house grew still, the oppressive atmosphere lifting. Evelyn and Agnes stood in the circle, breathing heavily, their hearts pounding in their chests. "It is done," Agnes said, her voice trembling. "The spirits are free." Evelyn felt a sense of relief wash over her. The house was no longer haunted, the curse lifted. She thanked Agnes for her help, grateful to have her home back. As she walked through the now peaceful house, she felt a sense of closure. The whispers were gone, the shadows banished. Life in Cedar Grove returned to normal for Evelyn. She continued to restore the house, transforming it into a warm and welcoming home. The town embraced her, and she found a sense of belonging she had not felt in years. But every now and then, on quiet nights, Evelyn would catch a glimpse of a shadow moving out of the corner of her eye, or hear a faint whisper on the wind. She would smile, knowing the spirits were at peace, watching over her and her home. The house on the hill was no longer a place of fear, but a testament to the strength of the human spirit and the power of love and redemption. As the years went by, Evelyn became a beloved member of the Cedar Grove community. She shared her story with those who were curious, telling them of the haunted house and how she had freed the spirits trapped within. The townspeople were captivated by her tale, and it became a part of Cedar Grove's folklore. Despite the house's dark history, it became a symbol of resilience and hope. Evelyn hosted gatherings and community events in her home, inviting neighbors and friends to share in the warmth and joy she had created. The once eerie Victorian house now stood as a beacon of light, a place where people could come together and celebrate life. However, Evelyn's peace was disrupted one fateful autumn evening. The leaves had turned a vibrant array of red and gold, and the air was crisp with the scent of impending winter. Evelyn was hosting a small dinner party for her closest friends, a tradition she had started to honor Richard's memory. As the guests arrived, laughter and conversation filled the house, creating an atmosphere of warmth and camaraderie. The dining room table was adorned with candles and seasonal flowers, and the smell of roasted turkey and spiced cider wafted through the air. As the evening wore on, Evelyn's friends began to share ghost stories, a fitting topic for the time of year. They talked about the old legends of Cedar Grove, the haunted woods, and the mysterious disappearances that had occurred over the centuries. Evelyn listened, smiling, but her thoughts kept returning to the events that had unfolded in her own home. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed through the house, causing everyone to jump. The guests exchanged uneasy glances, and Evelyn's heart raced. She forced a smile and assured them it was probably just the wind knocking something over. "Why don't we check it out?" suggested Thomas, one of her neighbors. "It'll add a little adventure to our evening." Reluctantly, Evelyn agreed, and the group made their way upstairs, guided by the light of their phones. As they reached the landing, they found the door to the attic slightly ajar, despite Evelyn's firm memory of having closed it earlier. The guests hesitated, sensing the tension in the air. "Maybe it's just the old house playing tricks on us," said Lisa, another neighbor, though her voice trembled slightly. Evelyn, feeling a mix of fear and determination, pushed the door open wider. The attic was just as she remembered it, filled with old furniture and relics of the past. The group stepped inside, the beams of their flashlights cutting through the darkness. "Look," whispered Thomas, pointing to the old trunk in the corner. "Wasn't that closed before?" Evelyn's blood ran cold. She approached the trunk cautiously, her friends close behind. The lid was indeed open, revealing the same faded photographs and letters she had discovered years ago. But there was something new inside, an old leather-bound book that she hadn't seen before. Evelyn picked up the book, its cover worn and cracked. As she opened it, the air around them grew colder, and the whispers returned, louder and more insistent than ever. The guests gasped, looking around in fear. "What is this?" Evelyn murmured, flipping through the pages. The book was filled with handwritten notes and strange symbols. It appeared to be a journal, but the language was unfamiliar, almost ancient. "Maybe we should leave," suggested Lisa, her voice barely above a whisper. Evelyn nodded, but as they turned to go, the attic door slammed shut with a force that shook the walls. Panic set in, and the whispers intensified, filling their minds with a cacophony of voices. The air grew thick with a malevolent presence, and shadows began to writhe and twist around them. "Agnes!" Evelyn cried, remembering the medium who had helped her before. "We need Agnes!" But before they could react, the shadows surged forward, enveloping them in darkness. Evelyn felt a cold hand grasp her arm, pulling her into the void. She fought against it, but the grip was too strong. She screamed, but her voice was swallowed by the darkness. Evelyn awoke to find herself alone in the attic, the whispers gone and the shadows dissipated. Her friends were nowhere to be seen. Panic gripped her as she scrambled to her feet, her mind racing. She stumbled down the stairs, calling out their names, but the house was silent. Desperate, Evelyn grabbed her phone and dialed Agnes's number. The call went straight to voicemail. She left a frantic message, begging for help, then called the police. When they arrived, they found no trace of her friends, only a terrified Evelyn and an empty house. The authorities searched the house and the surrounding woods, but no evidence was found. The guests had vanished without a trace, leaving behind a mystery that baffled the entire town. Evelyn, consumed with guilt and fear, isolated herself in her home, determined to uncover the truth. Days turned into weeks, and Evelyn's life became a nightmare. The whispers returned, louder and more menacing than before. She saw shadows moving in the corners of her vision, felt cold hands brush against her skin. The house seemed to pulse with a dark energy, feeding off her fear. One night, driven to the brink of madness, Evelyn decided to confront the source of the haunting once and for all. She returned to the attic, the leather-bound book in hand. She lit candles around the room, their flickering light casting eerie shadows on the walls. Taking a deep breath, she began to read aloud from the book, hoping to summon the spirits and demand answers. As she read, the temperature plummeted, and the air grew thick with an oppressive presence. The whispers swirled around her, rising to a deafening crescendo. Shadows gathered in the corners of the attic, forming into dark, twisted shapes. Evelyn's heart pounded in her chest, but she forced herself to continue. "Spirits of this house," she called out, her voice trembling. "I demand that you show yourselves. Tell me what you want." For a moment, there was only silence. Then, a figure stepped forward from the shadows. Elizabeth Whitfield. Her face was gaunt, her eyes hollow and filled with sorrow. Behind her, the forms of her family emerged, their expressions twisted in torment. "Why are you still here?" Evelyn asked, her voice barely a whisper. "What happened to you?" Elizabeth's gaze locked onto Evelyn's, and the room seemed to grow darker. "We were cursed," she said, her voice echoing with centuries of pain. "The house demands our souls. We cannot leave until the curse is broken." "How can I break the curse?" Evelyn pleaded, desperation in her voice. "You must find the source," Elizabeth replied. "The one who cast the curse. Only then can we be free." Evelyn's mind raced. She had to find out who had cursed the Whitfield family and why. Determined, she delved into the town's history, poring over old records and speaking with the oldest residents. She discovered that the Whitfields had been accused of practicing dark magic, leading to their isolation from the community. But the truth was more complex. In the late 1800s, the Whitfields had been prosperous and respected. Elizabeth's husband, Samuel, had been a well-known doctor, and their home had been a sanctuary for those in need. But jealousy and fear had brewed within the town. Rumors of dark rituals and forbidden knowledge spread like wildfire. The townspeople, driven by fear and superstition, had turned against the family. Evelyn learned of a man named Jonathan Graves, a rival doctor who had coveted Samuel's success. It was Graves who had spread the rumors, manipulating the town into believing the Whitfields were practicing witchcraft. When Samuel confronted him, a struggle ensued, and Graves, in a fit of rage, had cursed the Whitfields with his dying breath, vowing they would never find peace. Armed with this knowledge, Evelyn knew what she had to do. She had to find Graves's grave and perform a ritual to lift the curse. She sought Agnes's help once more, and together they gathered the necessary ingredients and prepared for the ritual. On a moonlit night, Evelyn and Agnes made their way to the old cemetery where Jonathan Graves was buried. The air was thick with tension, and the whispers followed them, growing louder as they approached the grave. They found the headstone, weathered and covered in moss, and began the ritual. As Agnes chanted, Evelyn sprinkled holy water and herbs over the grave. The ground trembled, and a cold wind whipped around them. The whispers grew into a chorus of agonized voices, but Evelyn steeled herself, focusing on the task at hand. "By the light of the moon and the power of truth," Agnes intoned, "we break the curse that binds the Whitfield family. Let their souls be free." A blinding flash of light erupted from the grave, and the voices ceased. The air grew still, and a sense of peace settled over the cemetery. Evelyn felt a weight lift from her shoulders, and she knew the curse was broken. Returning to the house, Evelyn found it transformed. The oppressive atmosphere was gone, replaced by a sense of warmth and tranquility. The whispers had ceased, and the shadows no longer writhed in the corners. Evelyn felt a sense of closure, knowing she had freed the spirits trapped within the house. The townspeople, hearing of Evelyn's bravery and determination, rallied around her. The mystery of the disappearing guests was never fully solved, but the house on the hill became a symbol of hope and redemption. Evelyn continued to live there, her life filled with the warmth and love of her friends and community. And so, the whispers of Cedar Grove faded into memory, leaving behind only the echoes of a story that would be told for generations to come. The house on the hill, once a place of fear and darkness, stood as a testament to the power of courage and the enduring strength of the human spirit.